I'm Kyle Kramer, the Executive Director of the Passionist Earth Spirit Center, an interfaith spirituality center in Louisville, Kentucky, devoted to creating a flourishing world through contemplative spiritual practices, fostering healthy communities, and environmental care. With support from the Kalliopeia Foundation, we have partnered with Bernheim Arboretum and Research Forest to create this video about the preciousness of water and the importance of restoring and safeguarding the health of watersheds. These interviews with a variety of water advocates took place at the Spirit Nest at Bernheim, a special, sacred place that beckons Bernheim visitors into a deeper connection with nature.
Rainfall, to some, a disruption. To the frog, perfection. Cattails dancing contentment and gratitude with the singing frog and all living creatures, interwoven and coherent in the broader net of the life-giving bog. Clouds gather dark foreboding, lightning flashes annunciation, thunder's predication, the cleansing radiance of rain.
Water in particular, I feel really connected to and enriched by. I think the clarity and the noise that comes with water and the just kind of impermanence of it too. The constant movement, that it's there and then it's not, especially like things when you're thinking about the beach is one of the most impermanent places on the planet. And that's what I really love about it. Now that I've gone back to school, I'm interested in pursuing a PhD in coastal ecology actually, and I really love birds, and water birds are my favorite of the birds. And I think in describing my attachment to water is I think kind of difficult because I think there's kind of a mystery to it, to the reason why I'm so in love with it, but I think that's kind of what makes it beautiful. It's just this innate kind of connection with the sound that water makes, the feeling of it on your hands, how grounding it is, all the different unique parts of water. It can be all 3 states of matter, and the fish are in there, and I love fish. You know, it's hard to say, but there's just something so wonderful and spiritual, I think, about it. And it's the life source, right? Like all life came from the ocean. I have a really strong attachment to old things. I find like mammals, I love mammals, but I don't feel as drawn to them as I do to things like fish or amphibians, reptiles, insects, and birds, which are all really old things. So I think I'm a big fan of getting to the essence, getting to the root, and so I think that's why I'm attracted to water.
I grew up in many places, and every place that we lived in or every home that we had a huge backyard, lots of trees. A few places we lived had a creek, or it was a creek nearby in walking distance. So just being able to be outside and play in that environment really got me interested in, well, what are other environments like? Or, you know, it was so cool to play with a tree. I want to, know more about this tree and see what I can do to kind of help trees and the water. But then as I got older, like into college, and I started traveling, I went to like Iceland, and we learned about the glaciers, and we got to hike some glaciers even, and just learning about how that environment is changing and what that means for like that community. And then I traveled to like Trinidad and Tobago, also dealing with water and the environment. And then in Nepal, landscapes were phenomenal there. And we did a lot about geohazards and the environment and just the vulnerabilities of people, which really made me think like, okay, this is a global thing, it's happening everywhere. People are really more vulnerable than they think. And it just got me more involved in ways that I can help like everyday people be cautious of this and work towards changing it or making a difference. When I was younger, even to this day, my parents are always like, don't let the water run, you should be cautious about water. Granted, this was coming from more of an economic perspective, but it was like, oh my gosh, why can't I let the water run? Like, I should care about this water, like where is it coming from? It's not unlimited, or why does it cost so much? Why can't we just let the water do whatever it does? But then as I grew up, I also learned that there's a lot of water strain, a lot of water stressors. And so for me, like living in the US, I'm like, oh, well, I have clean water in my toilet, I have clean water coming out of the faucet, I can go drink water wherever. But then like being abroad, you see certain communities, they're like, oh, I have to walk like 25 miles to get water. But just 10 years ago, there was water flowing here nicely. Living through that experience with them just kind of helped me see like water isn't as abundant or free as it should be, and just become more passionate about helping people get access to water, or just finding different ways to like work around not having water.
I went to work for an environmental attorney, and he was chair of the Kentucky River Watershed Watch. I had to go through the training like any other volunteer to learn about the program. Being involved with that organization, it has helped me learn more about the things that we as human beings do that impact our water. Once you become a Watershed Watch volunteer, you will never cross a water body without stretching your neck and looking over the bridge or wherever it is, and you begin to see erosion has happened on waterways and how other things are impacting that waterway. You start to look at how the land surrounds that water body. We all are stewards of this planet, and we need to be more concerned and step forward to take action. If we all just took care of the little piece of earth that we have and protected our air and our water and our land, it would be a much better place.
So I grew up on the banks of the Ohio on the Indiana side. So our house literally was right on the edge. So that's my first memory, is playing around the roots of a sycamore tree, catching gar and minnows, that sort of thing, collecting fossils and shells. And so to me, the first relationship I've ever had with water has always been about rivers. And over the years, I've lived in many different cities, and they all had rivers. And I've always felt like if there's a river running through it, it's home. So I lived in Budapest, Hungary for a long time. Our apartment looked out onto the Danube. I lived in Portland, and of course we had the Willamette, the Columbia, and the Sandy, 3 rivers. And now here I am back with the Ohio. And I've always felt like a river is this wonderful metaphor for constance and change at the same time, which is what always made it so meaningful to me. But it's also just that feeling of jumping off the end of the dock and feeling that little sting in your nose and not knowing what your feet are going to land on, that still is a source of delight to me.
I think for me, the beginning of my love affair with water was occasioned in part by growing up in Oklahoma, where we didn't have a lot of water. I lived about 1.5 miles from the North Canadian River, and most any time of the year you could walk across it, no water or very little. So some of it has to do with spending time on the farm with my grandpa, where there was a well, and I'll never forget the wonderful taste and feel of clean water coming right from the earth. Somehow that's always been a fascination for me. And even now, my son, who lives in South Texas, is the occasion for me visiting the San Marcos River. But the rivers in South Texas, the Guadalupe, the San Marcos, do not come down from mountains like they do here. They rise up out of the earth. And the symbolism of that alone is so powerful to me, that rising up from the earth is that which nourishes and blesses us and refreshes us. That's a great summary of my entire experience with creation in general. The way it strengthens us, the way it informs us, the way it refreshes us and nourishes us. It's the way water interacts with me and my spiritual awareness. And it has to do with cleansing. The cleansing radiance of rain, the healing that comes from water. My good buddy Bob Bush shared with me a thought he has. He contemplates water as he's taking a shower. And I think that's a wonderful thing to do, and you think it just connects to all creation. As a ritual, 4 or 5 times a week, I go down to the Ohio River and just sit there, and it's calming, even though it's heartbreaking, because the Ohio River is one of the most polluted rivers, if not the most polluted river in the United States. So it's heartbreaking in that sense, but it's still healing, even in its own degradation through our actions. And I had the same feeling the first time I saw the oceans, the Atlantic Ocean, the Pacific. Just being so close to something so ancient, so powerful. And it begets in me an important contribution to my own growth spiritually. It's transformation, just being in the presence of big water.
I get discouraged when it comes to water for more rural or poorer communities where they don't have the autonomy to speak up against businesses that have polluted the water and may have left, or businesses and corporations that are still polluting the water source. They seemingly don't have an alternative to fight against these companies or to bring the EPA in or different companies to check the water and then clean the water and make it safe for them to drink. I feel like this is the same for communities outside of the U.S., where there's been a lot of oil companies and just a lot of big businesses that have made the water so terrible to the point where they depend on bottled water, and then that just causes another issue. And then they have this idea that natural water sources are tainted and they're not safe to drink. It's really sad because it's an education thing, but also if you educate the populations on what's going on, they probably have already known this is what's going on, which is why they have the stereotypes about water sources. But once they know, it's do they have enough political autonomy to speak out against these different organizations and company? And then once you move past that, will that actually make a change, or does it become a monetary issue or more of a power struggle? So it's a doom and gloom thing. And then on top of that, everyone's we're running out of water. The ice caps are melting, we don't have water. And so you think, oh, am I going to grow up and then my grandchildren or my children or my niece, who I look at as my daughter, is she going to have to struggle for water like we did? Even though we're in the U.S., this is still a fight that's still prominent here, which a lot of people don't think about.
I heard a really fascinating story on NPR a couple years ago about the discovery in the Elbe River in the Czech Republic of some stones that were placed there in, I believe, the 17th century, and they're called the despair stones. And they literally say in German, "When you see me, you should weep." And they were placed there as a marker for if the river got that low, it meant that something was terribly wrong. And they emerged. And it's just a really startling thing that this voice would come back, this voice in stone from a few hundred years ago, to say something is terribly wrong. And I was really moved by that story and very disturbed by it. And I get very disturbed at what I see in everyday practice, the way people waste incredible amounts of clean, potable water on their lawns where it doesn't need to be, when there's so many better ways, that we've cultivated this whole aesthetic and this marketing around poisoning our lawns in the interest of having them look perfect and perfectly unnatural. I wish that people could prioritize ecology and protection of water over this false aesthetic that never should have been created to begin with. I feel bad for the social inequity around water. So not just at the really deep level of hundreds of millions of children who don't have access to clean water, which is true, but also the fact that so many kids don't have access to a place to swim. That was so much a part of my childhood. So much of what makes me a happy, healthy person was growing up on the water and always having that there.
When individuals just will not be responsible, they feel like that they can do whatever they want, and as long as no one sees them, that it never happened. And that's difficult. Education has helped. We've programs like Watershed Watch and other programs like that, as well as the environmental educators that we have and teachers that we have across the state that want to make sure that our children know how to take care, things not to do, to our planet. If you mess up and we lose this resource, there's really no going back.
I went to the Mediterranean Sea in the early 90s for the first and only time with my sister. We went to Spain, and we were at a city beach. So we start walking along the beach, getting away from the crowd, and it's, oh, this is gorgeous, this is fantastic. But then suddenly we're stopped and we couldn't walk any farther because there was a garbage pile. And all this garbage had washed from the sea to this little cove and landed on the beach. And it was a barrier. You couldn't get around it, you couldn't get over it, and you were stuck and then just staring at a garbage pile. And what was in it? What you would expect, right? Probably mostly plastic. There was kitchen waste, probably off of ships, big bags, mesh bags, and medical waste, and it was just loaded up. So what despairs me? All that waste in the seas. The Mediterranean is the most polluted sea. It is loaded with plastic. But that's not the only sea. All the seas are like this. That is despairing to know we have all that plastic.
I think a great example here in Louisville of something that is really discouraging and devastating to me is Beargrass Creek, or just the Ohio River. You just look at it and it's filled with trash. In fact, I went kayaking on the full moon. At night, you can't see any of that. So it's wonderful and beautiful, and then we would turn a headlamp on and it was just garbage everywhere. You were hitting it with your paddle, you were rowing over it, and it was just really devastating to me. And I think like anything you're really connected to, like for example your children or your family, for me nature is that. And so to see people treating it that way because of whatever reason, because of ignorance, because they don't have the relationship with nature that I think we all do have, I think on an innate level. I don't think we have a choice but to have that relationship because we are it. But I think we've just come so many levels away from it, and that's really discouraging to me. And I often feel a strong sense of hopelessness in terms of, we're at this really critical point right now, like today and yesterday and tomorrow, in terms of changing things and turning things around and cultivating this relationship and caring and saving the environment. And then we have people, flying to other planets, trying to, do things like that. And I personally have a hard time believing that we're going to do it in time. And that's really discouraging to me. And I know a lot of people are a lot more optimistic. Because so much of my connection with nature has come through personal healing, I feel that that's true of everything. And so I also really struggle, like I am an environmental science major, so we're learning about all the different solutions like carbon taxing or capping and trading and all this other stuff, and solutions to fixing these kind of environmental crises and like having this hope. But in my mind, that is kind of almost creating more of a dissonance, because I feel like you're still pandering to just convincing people, oh, we can capitalize on this, or oh, we can. And to me, that's not a solution. That's just another Band-Aid to getting people halfway down the road, and then we'll just address it again. And I really think it's more about looking this thing in the eye and looking at ourselves as individuals in the eye. And I think without having that relationship, you're never going to care. And if it's just all about economy, then it's never going to be about ecology, and they're just not the same thing, no matter how much we try to line them up. So I think it's really more of a foundational issue and an upheaving of that. But I think if you start looking, if you just notice, it's unavoidable. You can't not fall in love with it. And I think that's really, in my mind, that's the route we need to be going, is helping people cultivate that relationship, because it's not about capping and trading. It's about the wonder. It's about I see myself in there. I think everything's about love. I mean, even hate is about love. Grief is about love, and the planet is about love, and everything that we are is that. So I think it's foolish to kind of say it's about putting a price on something, or I don't know, buying time or whatever it is. There's a quote, I think it's by Maya Angelou, like, when someone shows you who they are, believe them. And I think we've shown the planet who we are. And so even if we turn it around this time, I just don't see a lot of, I guess I love the planet more because it's loved me more. And so I really feel more hope about it. I just really strongly believe in like the oneness and the interconnectedness. And even if I am not here, I am here, because there is no real I, it's like I am as much the tree as anything. So to me, it's the planet is it. I really hate technology. mostly because I don't know how to use it. I think it's very analogous with the ways, the degrees of separation people have created with themselves in nature, because we're taking, an ore or a rock or whatever it is, and we're dividing it times 2 billion to come up with a computer. Like, that's a natural product, really, but it isn't. And I think it's just a great example. Like, that's exactly where we are today. We're so far from what and who we really are that we can't even touch it. It's just like we have to really be driven there to create that relationship. And some of us, I think, are more attuned to that initially from birth, and then I think some people have to work a lot harder, just like anything. I think all of these things are really interconnected, and I really feel that the solution to everything is creating that relationship with yourself, and then through that comes everything else, because you can't not get to love. You can't not get to that place if you're going through and you're healing, and then everything else is like dominoes. I think we're focusing on all the parts, but it's really within. Through grief, you can't not get to that. As long as you go through the whole thing, as long as you look it in the eye, you can't not get to hope. But there has to be action.
Well, people are creative, and I feel like a lot of young adults have been stressed out about the idea of not having water, to the point where they are thinking of more innovative ways to have access to water or ways to clean and purify water. I almost did a project with Watershed. You donate shoes, and then they get different car parts, and they make batteries and generators to give to communities so that they can filter their water, clean it, or whatever they need for their water. And so that gave me hope. And I was like, if you could take a car battery, or if you could donate a shoe and then help them get money to get a car battery or smaller different electrical appliances to build a generator in some random place that's in the rural community, and they can keep hold of this, maintain it, and then they can make that even better if they need to, or make more, and then solve like a small part of a water crisis. Like, that's pretty cool.
Part of the encouragement, I guess, is seeing individuals, the hundreds of volunteers that we have that get out there on the lakes, rivers, and streams and monitor our waterways. We have several good people at Division of Water that truly care about our waterways. I mean, they live here too. This is their home. This is where they enjoy boating and fishing and swimming. So I find encouragement in the fact that, we are getting education out there, and it does make a difference. You can, when you are talking with children, I do educational fairs with children at schools, and some of these children come in and they immediately know that I'm the water lady, and they've heard from their older siblings what it means to protect our water. So you can see that the education is getting out there, and you can see that people really do want to make a difference. If we could just get that other group in there, that I don't think they think about it. In many ways, I don't think people that get on a waterway and sink their bottles and cans to the bottom of the water, I don't think they think about what they're doing, not only to our water source, but to the habitat that lives there.
What gives me hope? In part because I have the good fortune to work at Bernheim, where our team does nature-based education to try to develop the next generation of environmental stewards. I see so many kids connecting with water and connecting with the woods in ways that I hope are going to help them form a relationship for life, that they're going to protect what they love, and they're going to love it because they were taught it. That gives me hope. I also get hope from my students, my graduate students that I teach in Germany in the International Masters of Landscape Architecture program, because they come from all over the world and they have solutions that come from different parts of the world. I've learned that there are such things as wicked problems, and wicked not in the sense of evil, but in the sense, there's a different definition of wicked, as something that has a lot of moving parts and is very complex and hard to pin down. So water is a very wicked problem. And I've come to realize in working with my students that for every wicked problem, there is some place in the world and some place in time where somebody has found a solution for that problem. I teach a course where the students do comparisons of understandings of landscape and nature in their respective countries. And a lot of them go into very deep explorations of old traditional solutions that have been forgotten in the course of globalization. And you realize that all the wisdom that we need to solve our problems are here. It's all here. We just have to access it, and we have to be curious, and we have to listen to each other. I've often told my students that the best textbook for a landscape architect is a well-worn passport, because I've been to 41 countries in my life, and there's not a single one I've gone to where I haven't learned something very important. They all have something to teach us, every culture and every community. These young, idealistic people with their great ideas also give me hope. I think it's kind of funny that people often look for mentors in people my age or older. But really, a lot of us should be getting mentors in their 20s. You know, people who have fresh ideas and a new perspective and who are going to be the ones living in this future that we're trying to fix right now. One of my idols, Wangari Maathai, the Kenyan Nobel laureate, was once quoted as saying, "The generation that ruins the environment is not the generation that pays the price. That's the problem." And I hope that this next generation is able to fix what previous ones have done.
Some things that I do is try to educate myself on watersheds, like what are the sources? Are there any like businesses or corporations that are like taken from the water source, or is there anything that between that relationship that might be better? Maybe I need to start with knowing about it to even think about how to change it or fix it or address it. On a more personal level, I try to take shorter showers. I don't leave the water running unless like I'm filling something up typically, or drink tap water instead of buying bottled water, so I have a reusable bottle. I visit different water sources. I feel like that's a good way to physically get connected to like water and seeing the benefit and just the therapeutic effects that it have on people, which helps me care for water. So I feel like if people care for water and where it comes from, then they'd be more willing to make any changes on behalf of water. Water is for everyone, and water should be free, it should be clean, it should be a safe space. Like just thinking about water or visiting water sources.
I guess the obvious one is don't litter, right? Like don't throw that Coke can in the river or in the creek or whatever. But I think more than that, go outside and spend some time just noticing and looking around. And then if you still at the end of that time want to throw a Coke can in the river, I don't think you will though, because I think, you know, if you look at anything long enough, you're bound to fall in love with it. And I think if you just go outside and you breathe and you notice and you're a part of the world instead of a part of whatever is going on inside you or inside your phone or whatever, then it's inevitable to come to these things. And I think also having compassion for yourself and for others and not being judgmental, because, you know, as much as I love the earth, it's really difficult to transfer into single-use plastic or away from that, or it's really difficult to recycle all the time, especially if you don't have the resource. It's really difficult to do some of these things that they're asking you to do. But at the same time, it isn't. It's like a choice, you know. But if I sit there and shame myself for it, then I'm probably less likely to recycle again, you know? So I think just keeping that in mind and not coming at things defensively, just coming at them more with love and spending time on the water. I think really that's the kindest thing you can do for yourself and for the planet, is to spend time with it. And spend time committed to it.
Some of the things that my husband and I do, and we've tried to teach our children and grandchildren, that you do these things because we're responsible for what we do in our little corner of the world. We're cautious about what we apply to our yard or anything else, because that does run off, end up in a waterway, end up in our groundwater. Take care of your vehicles, you know, to keep them from leaking. Kind of manage the water that runs off of your yard into a storm drain or anything like that, you know, whether that be having it directed into flower beds. My husband and I have a lot of landscaping around our property, and we have even our gutters that drain to a specific area just to water our plants. Picking up your trash, it's a big one, but it's true. Just the small things, if we all did the little small things, like I said, in our little corner of the world, things would get better.
Everything from don't use your dishwasher or washing machine until that you have a full load. Don't just be willy-nilly with that. When you're shaving or brushing your teeth, turn off the water between actions. Don't just let it run. I carry a water bottle. I don't use single-use plastic if I can help it for my water. But, you know, I looked at my refrigerator as I was thinking about, okay, single-use plastic, I'm not going to use water bottles, but I look at my refrigerator, there's so much of it. So we have to find ways to be smarter about that.
We've become ever more conscious of the shortages of water, and that water will be even more of a crisis as we move forward, unless we do something. And so it's easy to despair. And try not to go there, although some days I struggle like all the rest of us. But by and large, it's not a time to despair. It's a time to create hope by doing the right things. So for me, when I feel that sense of despair, I recall the things I try to do habitually to help ameliorate this problem. One would be just taking a shower, as we all do, I hope most of us do. We would shower, and then turn the water off and scrub ourselves down, and then turn it on for another brief period of time and rinse. And I think those little things are some things that we could do that would contribute so much if we made that a part of our pattern of behavior. And also just trying to use water in every way less and be conscious of that, develop a mindset that understands the role that water plays and the way that water is threatened right now. So for me, just trying to, instead of despair, to try to act out the things we need to do to take care of that problem.
I really love the beach. I really love the ocean. I think it is so connective and it's so vast. You know, a lot of people talk about a spiritual experience or a God experience as being something greater than yourself. Gosh, is the ocean that? And I think just it breathes. I mean, the tide and the waves, it breathes, and we breathe, and everything is, I think, a part of this bigger respiration kind of thing. And there's just so much life on the ocean and on the beach. It's like unavoidable. You can't not touch it. And so it's just really vibrant and vocal and loud but soft, and calm but not calm. You know, it's like, it's everything at once, and that's what I really love about the ocean. I just feel so much closer to myself when I'm there, and closer to beyond myself, which I think is really more what I mean, closer to the oneness. And my dog loves the beach, and I love her. But I think for those of us who don't live on the coast, there's ways to access that everywhere, and I see that in trees just as much, or the creek here at Bernheim. My favorite trails are the ones that have creeks running through them. Just there's something about being in water, being near water, touching it, feeling it, and it just washing you of all of the things that don't matter. I don't know, I really just believe in water. And I also get really dehydrated really easily, so I'm drinking water all the time. It's just something that I am really connected to and really need closeness with.
It's essential to the human body, and it's essential to every living creature on the planet. And so not only do I despair over pollution with plastic and know that is hurting the marine life, but if we don't have adequate water in our ecosystem and safe and clean water, then life can't continue.
Here there's water everywhere. There's water in the air, there's water in the trees, grass is so lush. You know, even though we're not near the water, we are deeply connected to it, I think. And as things start changing with the climate, I think we're really gonna be forced to see how really connected we are with water and how important it is to spend time with it and honor it.
I think one of the most magical experiences you can give a child is playing in a creek. Just from my own experience and from watching kids here, I think it's the scale of it. You know, it's really interesting when you get people to talk about their childhood landscapes and they're remembering them as an adult, it always goes back to the scale of childhood, which is small. So it's not focusing on the huge, big picture. It's something up close and something tactile and something that has smells and sounds and creatures. And I think that's why creeks quite often play such a magical role with kids, that you put a kid in a creek and there's no such thing as a bad day.
Oh, healing river, send down your waters, send down your waters where we stand. Oh, healing river, send down your waters to heal the pain throughout this land. When the body's aching, when the heart is breaking, when we feel forsaken, bent to the ground, oh, healing river, send down your waters. Oh, healing river, send your waters down. Oh, seed of freedom, awake and flourish. Let the deep roots nourish, let the tall stalks rise. Oh, seed of freedom, awake and flourish. Proud leaves unfurling against the skies. Oh, healing river, send down your waters, wash our souls, make us whole. Oh, ancient river, send down your waters. Oh, healing river, send your waters down. Oh, come, ye people, down to the river. Let's renew our promise to this old